If these streaks are so powerful, then why do they often end with rage quitting or ghosting the habit entirely that they're intended to keep? I'm Rob, and I meditated every single day for over a year. In fact, I think it was near to 2 years. But the day that I missed, everything unraveled. Instead of a small lapse, I stopped pretty much entirely for nearly 2 years. And by the way, if this is a problem that your product is facing, let's find together a way to fix that. You just have to go ahead and click on the link in the description and we'll have a chat. Because I'm also a consultant. I'm not just the guy who stopped meditating for almost 2 years. I'm also a consultant at the Octalysis Group, the prime consultancy for behavioral design and gamification. I'm also the host of this podcast, where in these episodes, we deconstruct how gamification and behavioral strategies can help retention, loyalty, and all these things for products in daily business. And I do this by myself, like on this episode, or with fantastic guests that we have every single week. So let's just dive right into what these streaks are. By definition, it's a game technique that was learned from video games. And a prime example of this is Duolingo. Duolingo uses a streak mechanic to get people to come back every single day. I'm guessing that they figured out, and I think the founders talked about this before, that the language learning benefits a lot from continuous regular practice. It's not about logging, 100 hours at the end of the year. It's more about spending a little bit of time even every single day. So you build in that muscle, you continually practice, you give that practice to the brain so that it can actually dive in and do that stuff. And it makes consistency, early consistency especially, easy. It's like, oh, what do I need? I need to come back every single day and do this over and over again. And the streak mechanic visualizes that. And it also gives you that loss aversion, core drive 8, where you push through the initial resistance of, oh, maybe I'm today having a hard day. Maybe I won't have time. But, let me do something. Let me invest those 10 minutes some point during the day to make sure I keep my streak, which is fine if that happens every now and then, because it lets you have those normal days where you're actually doing most of the exercises, but you don't want to lose your streak, because that's what happens. You lose your streak and then had this thing, I had 10 days, 100 days, 300 days, or like in my case, almost 2 years, I think was the exact numbers. And back to my story with meditation, initially it was more than just not just tracking behavior. It made a definition. When people talk about meditating, one of the things that science says is you don't need to, like, of course, there are benefits of meditating for 2 hours every day, but most of us cannot integrate something like that into our daily lives. So you can still define yourself as a meditator and get something like 80 or 90% of the benefits just by investing. I don't know the exact number, but it's something like 7 or 9 minutes every day, which, you can just average and say, do a 10-minute session of meditation. You do that every day. And the benefits of, modifying your brain and creating these new neural pathways and all of that, that is sufficient to build that in there. And of course, it gives you that identity of, I am a meditator. I am somebody who meditates every single day. And it actually works. It worked pretty well for me in that sense. From what I was saying at the start, it's not that streaks themselves are bad. It's just that if you see them in isolation and you don't understand everything else that is happening around them, the risks that they have, they can just become something that is incomplete. Yet, as you can tell from the way I've been describing this and what happened at the start, there is a trap, and we will be discussing about that trap. What happened in my case, and it is something that happens to many people as well. I missed a day. It sounds like it's not a big deal, right? But I missed a day, and that means a streak is ruined. Ruined my streak. I failed. I ruined my streak. Can I really make it to 500 days meditating in a row? If I can't, then kind of what's the point? Typical streaks amplify that shame. I am a meditator. If I am a meditator, how come I miss a day? I am a language learner, Duolingo. How come if I am a language learner, I am consistent? You build this identity around it. How come I missed a day? How come my streak now says 1 day or 0? You see the counter, big 0. This binary counter snapping just back to 0. I lost everything. There's other mechanics in Duolingo, the hearts, there's pressure stacks, there's leaderboards, there's all sorts of things around. Oh, I was at this great position where I had all this super long streak. Now I lost it. Imagine being a person who's been with the streaks on Duolingo since the streak started. Might be a guy. I should actually research that online. There's probably a guy who, or a gal, of course, who has been doing this for almost all of that. Who's the longest streak holder on Duolingo? Imagine the level of pressure that you get. You are the person who has the longest streak on Duolingo. What happens if you miss a day? You're no longer the person who has the longest streak on Duolingo anymore because you don't have that streak anymore. You had it historically, you were that person. Once were, you're no longer that person. There's also the notifications reminding you of what you lost. You lost your streak. So what happens when people, especially with pretty long streaks, years streaks, if it's like a 10-day, it's very feasible. It's something you can recover from. If it's, a month, you probably can do that. What happens when it's 100 days, 300 days, a year, 2 years? A lot of users end up abandoning the app entirely, rage quitting because of the shame that they're experiencing, the frustration that comes from, oh, I just made this small mistake, or they were doing it in the last 10 minutes of the day, and then they missed something. It didn't work out as they expected it to, and they lost their streak, even if they were committing that, in terms of Octalysis design, that desired action. They did the thing they were supposed to, yet they lost their streak. The pain is not really the missed session. It's the collapse of the identity. In my case, I wasn't somebody who meditates anymore. From being that person, that thing I wanted to get to, I wasn't that person anymore right after I lost my streak. You'll be asking yourself, what can we do about this, Rob? You're just giving us all the problems that these streaks have. Why we're not, the streaks don't eventually work for us. So what can we do? And there are things to do. Remember the contrast. You have that rigid streak, every day or nothing. Weekends, long travel. There's people who, like, I took a flight from Madrid to Santiago de Chile in Chile. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was 16 hours of flight. Imagine if I had a streak on whatever. The chances of me losing out on that streak were ginormous. What happens in a day like that? Or I went out to nature. I went on a silent retreat. Imagine I'm a meditator. I go to a silent retreat. I'm meditating pretty much every day, but I'm not connected. I'm not looking at my phone. I lose my streak. Where is the flexibility to that? So that's where the concept of flexible consistency, most days over time, of course, with room for your life to actually happen. And I don't want to, I'm going to mention the app that I was using. And honestly, I still use it. You probably saw some of the screens appearing before if you're watching this on video. It's not to shame the app, because in fact, that single way of counting streaks on daily, they actually did something that is part of the fix that I propose here. And they do a great job at that. They also have a bunch of other things as compared to other meditation apps who only single focus on that daily streak. What this app, which used to be called, when I did this, 10% Happier by Dan Harris, now it's called Happier or Happier Meditation, something like that. I don't know. I just click on the button on my phone these days. They have stats that allow you for not only the daily streak, they still have it. If you still want to have that daily thing, that's there. But you can also have the weekly streak. Even if you meditate once a week, you can keep your weekly streak. That is a lot more manageable, a lot more achievable. It still feels like you are progressing through. And honestly, you don't want to lie to yourself and say, oh, I just kept the streak going, which I did once. I have to confess that. I did it. One of my streaks, weekly streaks, went through, and it's like, oh, it's Sunday. I need to meditate a little bit. So I just went in and meditated for a little while. Next week happened the same thing. And that happened 2 or 3 times. So I did this on one of my streaks, but that's not what you're looking for. If you're identifying, if you're building into your identity, you want to be a meditator, it's more about keeping that habit going. You can do it 5 times, 6 times per week, or even 7 days a week, but every now and then you miss a day. It is not a big deal. Even in the studies, like, well, every day doesn't mean not losing a single day ever in your life. There are ways in which you can definitely build this in. You can build in your systems, you can have explicit rest days. Recovery is not failure. It's not, when you get the message of you lost your streak, how about you change that? Literally, a simple change of messaging. Instead of having the owl being crying over there, you say, welcome back. Did you have a day where, and you give them some options on how to recover their streak if you still want to keep that daily streak. But you give them, you're opening the doors to that excuse being valid, valuable, and accessible to anyone who needs it. Because here's the thing with loss and avoidance. Usually, you put these consequences very clear, very strong, so that people don't want the consequence to happen. And that's what the mechanic is there for. The technique is do not lose your streak. It's intended for you not to lose it. The problem is you might lose it. So what happens when that happens? Nobody, not the developer, not the user, wants for the consequence to actually happen. So what you end up building into that are ways of recovering your streak, coming back from that, and the consequence not being as dire as it might have initially sounded. So you can open up to that. Oh, what happened? You had a sick day. Are you feeling okay? You saw you didn't come back. That kind of thing allows you to have those explicit rest days, or you set up your I think it's an app actually called Streak, where you can define, oh, my streak is doing this 3 times a week, 5 times a week, 6 times a week, not every single day. So your streak is defined in a different way. And Finch also does this. Those type of streaks, they have repairs, they have different kinds of goals. You build that into the system. The idea is that your system that you're building, your product, should assume that the users will miss a day eventually. You want to make their return feel like something normal. You don't want them. There are stories of kids not wanting to be language learners ever again because they lost their streak on Duolingo. That is exactly the opposite of what you want. You want them to come back and feel welcome, feel happy that they came back. With meditation, with language learning, I said before, of course, daily practice is better than cramming at the end of the month. But there's a lot in between. Coming back every single day and missing a day here and there is not a big issue for your learning. It's an issue if by losing a day, there's an effect. They call it the abstinence violation effect, or the what the effect. It's like, oh, what the heck? I already ate that cookie. I might as well eat the whole jar if you're dieting. I missed a day on Duolingo. I might as well never again try to learn a language. You want to avoid that. And this is an effect that is well studied, by the way, and their effects and all of that. And that is the consequence of streaks or things that are built in with such rigidity. They don't leave any room for flexibility. And you have I made a small mistake, and you turn it into a huge mistake for your goals. That's exactly what you want to stay away from. Flexible streaks are bendable. You can bend them a little bit without breaking the streak. Because again, the consequence, that core drive 8, is you're showing it to motivate people into not feeling the consequence. You don't really want the consequence to happen. Let's make a quick recap. Remember, you want to design for lapses. It's grace days, pauses, soft landings. Never drop back to zero on a single miss. Keep in mind that this will happen, and you don't want this to discourage users from using your solution ever again. And the next one is that you want to normalize them returning. Welcome back. Let's continue, rather than you lost your streak, right? That's the exact opposite of what you want. You can also use the zoom out of the metric. Instead of daily streaks, you can go for weekly streaks. Percentages of adherence. Instead of saying you lost your streak, you say you've done this for 90% of your days, 99% of your days, 80% of your days, whatever that looks like. There's another one that they use, which are the heat maps, where you can visualize. If you see one of the dots where you missed, it's like, oh, you missed one, but you see everything else where you've been consistent. It just becomes a flip, and it feels okay. That's what you want actually to happen. And make sure you're always measuring what happens. The amount of quality time that they're actually spending, which has become a problem, admittedly, for Duolingo. Some people just keeping the streak for way too long and not really language learning anymore. They're just doing it for the streak. It's a retention tactic. It's not about the learning anymore. It's about keeping the streak. And that's what you want to avoid. So the amount of quality time you spend, meaningful actions, the lessons that you actually do complete, new lessons, new learning. It's not just that daily active users vanity metric, which only is useful for investors. And I'm not saying it's not important, but it's the metric that you're showing your investors to get more money, not what your users might actually care about. So you can still keep that metric going. You can show weekly active users. There are many other metrics that you can also show to showcase activity without losing the power of people coming back pretty much every day. Or you can rationalize daily active users, assuming that these users come in at least 4 or 5 times a week, for example. Depending on what the solution is, it might make sense for people to come every single day, or 3 times a week, or every single weekday, or twice a week, or once a week, that can also be fine. Make sure you account for these in your design. So I don't want to blame everything of me breaking that streak for almost 2 years on the fact that I lost one streak. But it did have a profound effect on my retention, my engagement with the app. I was every day grinding to make sure I got that in. I had a very strong habit. Other things happened in life as well, and that kind of washed away. But I would probably have been able to push forward better if I had been able to catch back up that streak. A better system at that point, which is it wasn't still implemented, wouldn't have erased my identity as a meditator. It would have still said you're still a meditator, you just had an off day. And that's fine. In terms of meditation, which was the case there, in case of language learning for Duolingo and many other apps as well. If your users are one missed day away from rage quitting forever, your streak is not a habit mechanic. It's a time bomb. It's a time bomb. If you've ever quit an app after losing a streak, please go ahead and share the story. And if you're a product lead and you're rethinking your streak system, or you're looking at building a streak system that actually works, do reach out. I love helping teams design habit techniques that respect human psychology and actually get them the results that they're looking for. All you have to do is go ahead and click on the link in the description. And as we like to say at the end of our episodes, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over.